Welcome to Adventure Unfiltered with your host, Lorna Bray. So, my next guest is Myrtle Simpson, and there's some people you meet who immediately change your sense of what's possible, and for me, that was Myrtle. At 95 years old, nothing about her presence felt defined by age. There was clarity, warmth, and a spark that felt timeless. Our connection came, in part, through skiing, through a shared love of mountains, movement, and the freedom that comes from travelling across winter landscapes under your own power. But more than that, it was her spirit that struck me, grounded, open, and still deeply curious about life. This episode of Adventure Unfiltered feels different from the others, not because it lacks adventure, far from it, but because it offers something rarer, deep perspective shared across a lifetime lived fully. On the surface, Myrtle's story is extraordinary. She's a pioneer of Scottish skiing and the first woman to ski across Greenland. There's been expeditions to Peru, and she is the recipient of the Polar Medal, achievements that in a lifetime are remarkable. But the longer we talked, the clearer it became that Myrtle's story is not really about records, firsts, or milestones. It's about how she chooses to live, with freedom, with curiosity, with a deep connection to mountains, snow, and wild places, and with a relentless determination to keep moving forward, always forward. Myrtle represents something rare, a life where adventure is not a chapter, but a thread running through everything. So, what stayed with me the most in this conversation with Myrtle was her refusal to live cautiously. Throughout her life so far, she's chosen movement over comfort, independence over limitation, and experience over fear. Even when expectations, particularly for women at the time, suggested a narrower path, she continued to raise her family outdoors, to explore, to ski, to travel, and to live on her own terms. Her story is not one of dramatic turning points, but of steady conviction that life is for living, not waiting, and that adventure does not belong to any one age, it belongs to those who remain open to it. So let's go. This is Myrtle Simpson with Across Ice, Mountains and Time. We'll just have a chit chat and then see how it goes, shall we?
Oh, absolutely. But my drink is useless because it's gone stone cold.
Oh no! Right,
yours.
Let me take. No, mine's is nice and hot and fresh.
Why is mine cold?
Mine is newer than yours.
Oh, I had a first one before you were there.
Yes.
Well, I've let it get bloody thing get cold.
Do you want me to go heat it up for you?
No. Would do without it.
Oh, Myrtle, welcome to the podcast. I, for the last several days, have been buried in all of the stuff that you've done, all of your books, and researching all of the things that you've done, and it's just incredible. Absolutely incredible to learn, and I mean there's so much to talk about.
I wrote this book, Home is a Tent, to make some money. I mean, that's the story of what you want to talk about.
Yeah.
So for goodness sake, buzz through it. I wrote this from my own diary.
Is that your favourite? Is that your favourite book that you wrote?
No, but it's what I read to remind myself.
To remind yourself.
What it was like.
I think that's wonderful though, having those memories to be able to look back on.
Well, you know, are you a writer?
Well, not. I'm not an author, but I like to write. Yeah.
Well, you know, if you're an author, you have a diary, and
yes.
you jolly well fill it.
Yes. So when me and my husband, we tend to go on 3 or 4 week expeditions of our own. So last summer we did the Missinabie River in Canada, in northern Ontario.
Yes.
And it was 20 days on the river. I had to keep a diary because it's long days and you're tired and there's so much happening, and we always made time every evening to sit down and write because otherwise you just forget.
Well, I taught creative writing at the college.
Oh, did you?
For several years. And I always said, write what you know about. Keep a diary. You know, and that was my main lesson to everybody, keep a diary.
Yeah.
And there was one guy that wrote boring stuff. And he was a medic. And I thought, you know, I said, you must have the most interesting people of all, and them having to take their clothes off and so on. You know, you could write some magic books. Oh, well, if I can write about that, you know, and suddenly his writing
became better.
was super fun. We all liked reading it.
Yeah.
You know, changed the names and so on.
And the house that we're in just now, of course, you built yourself, didn't you?
We completely built it ourselves, yes.
Yeah, it's absolutely gorgeous, and it's a beautiful sunny day today in the Cairngorms National Park. And when I came in, your son Robin told me that this house is actually on an island.
We bought an acre of land. It's suddenly very important to me where we live. So at 95, you're supposed to go into a care home. And I reckoned, you know, not for me, a care home. I like sitting in the sun. You know, I couldn't think of anything worse than however nice it was. You know.
There's so much freedom here, isn't there?
Well, exactly, and if you're used to it. And going out and picking, I mean, I've got the front doors covered in tomatoes, which are ripening. You know, I grow them against the glass. I have 4 kids. They all live in different places. 3 lots of them emigrated. And they say, well, Mum, it was your fault. You told us to get used to the wide, wide world. And that's immediately what they all did. What I like to see is when they like to go together.
Yes.
So the ones that emigrated to Canada join up with the ones that immigrated to somewhere else and so on, and that's lovely for us to see.
Yeah, it's lovely, and I think it's such a gift that you've given your children as well. I grew up in a family where we were out camping and hiking all the time, every weekend.
Yes.
And probably when I was in my 20s, I kind of lost it a little. But in my 30s, I almost rediscovered it, and it's a massive part of my life.
Absolutely, and I know exactly what you mean, because because of my husband's work in the university, we lived in town, but always went to the country at the weekends. But we didn't actually have a sort of home at that time. But you know, it was just magic to take your kids, and it was a new thing that had happened in Scotland, particularly. It's interesting, you know, the families with any money often did have a family home in the borders, something like that. But townies, you know, they suddenly became interested in things like the Campsies out of Glasgow. Mm-hmm. And if it was Edinburgh you're talking about, of course, it was the Pentlands.
Myrtle, what's your first memory of the mountains and snow?
My absolute memory is on my father's back. He was in the army, and in India, the British Army sort of ran India. You know, it was the time of the Raj, as people talk about. So in the summertime, we all went up to the mountains, all the Brits, all the politicians, and most British families always had nannies, and everybody had a nanny, and you called them your ayah. And the mothers had a nice time going off skiing or whatever, and the ayahs weren't supposed to take the children away off the British Army area, but of course they took them home. So we all spoke local speak, and I used to sing Indian songs to my kids.
Oh,
really? Still do that. Aya natri, bottle kana. And people are always surprised when my kids start singing.
What does it mean? What's that?
Aya natri. Oh, it's a sort of song you sing to babies.
Like a nursery rhyme.
It's a nursery rhyme. That's the very word. That's where we went into the mountains. A lot of people went to the south of India for the heat and the sun and the bathing, but we always went north.
You went into the mountains. And do you think that's where you got your love for the outdoors from?
I think all my family had always been climbers, or not skiers so much. Now they're all skiers. They've all won international championships and they all still ski.
And skiing for you is very important as well, isn't it?
Well, we brought skiing to this part of the world. If there was a Brit that could ski well, they had money and they were English, Scots living in England, and they went abroad, of course. Now it's completely different. They've invented plastic skiing.
That's right, yeah.
The artificial skiing, it's not plastic, they tell me. No, it's not plastic. Because we've got a course of it very close here, to here, this place. So suddenly you passed it coming
Yes,
up. Suddenly
Loch
you see a
Inch.
bit of snow. Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
That's what I
nowadays,
learned on the dry ski slope as
well,
well.
exactly. That's where people can learn. Nobody had a place in Scotland to go and ski. You had to go to the Alps. But of course, there were magic places there, and Britain had some very fine skiers.
Yeah.
But they weren't known within Scotland so much because there were, that if you were a skier, it meant you had enough money to go to the Alps. When we had children, we thought this is daft. Why can't we ski in Scotland? And we really got skiing in round and about here going. The first thing is you thought, you can't make money out of people carrying their skis up the hill. You can't let them do that and then build a lift. So I thought, who owns this flipping mountain? And a good chunk of it belongs to a very a super family. And so I went to see their father and said, we want to do some skiing here in the winter time. We've come to live in the area. There's magic skiing in the winter. And if we got the skiing going, we'd have to have a road. You can't get money out of somebody who's walked up carrying the skis as we do.
And that's a long way.
A long way. And, nobody was skiing much, and people got me, for instance, we take our children abroad and put them in the local race when you saw people. And the British kids were useless. They never won anything. We thought, this is stupid. Our kids are as good as them. Why can't they ski any better? So let's have a ski area. So that was purely for the skiers. I mean, the racing kids that we started it. I went and asked the grandfather of this family, and he said, that sounds a magic idea to have skiing. Of course you can have a road. Of course I'll help put up some money, and Highland region very reluctantly coughed up some cash too.
Yeah.
And the road was put in. And once you've got the road in, you can start thinking of getting them up the hill with lifts. No point paying to build a lift, and then anyway, that's now all happens, as you know. And
yeah, it's wonderful.
People come to Aviemore to ski, and it's thriving, and it's now a little town.
It's wonderful. And I when I said I grew up kind of in the outdoors, and we used to come here skiing as well when I was a kid.
Right.
And I remember getting up at the crack of dawn because we lived just outside of Edinburgh as kids, and we would get up first thing in the morning, and Dad would drive us up to Aviemore.
Yes.
And it was so exciting. And so many people have such a wonderful connection with this area because of that.
Absolutely. Edinburgh has a plastic slope.
It does. That's also where I learned.
Kids learn to go
ski
to the Pentlands. Mm-hmm. Well, they never would have heard of anything like that. So stupid. In older days, my grandparents' days, skiing in the Pentlands. Mm-hmm. But now everybody can.
Now everybody's there and does
Except
that.
me, I never mastered the plastic slope.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel the same, does it?
No, the plastic is so good now, apparently, that you think you're on real snow, and it really helps.
Yeah,
and suddenly,
I heard that.
All our young skiers, our British team, it's doing incredibly well, winning international things at a standard it never has before.
I think it's wonderful, and it's given our children those opportunities, isn't it?
Well, of course.
I absolutely love that you took your kids to all of these great big expeditions, and I know at the time a lot of people frowned on that because...
Oh, of course they did. We lived in Glasgow when I first married and had a baby, the first baby. And there I was with my flipping baby, and I was waving the friends away for the weekend. And I thought, wait a minute, what's wrong with us doing that? And I then got very cross letters in both the Scotsman and the Glasgow Herald particularly. Who is this woman? How can she call herself a nice mother? Taking her children to Glencoe, where it's cold and windy and wet, and tents aren't nearly good enough and so on. Well, of course, that was all absolutely bonkers. There's nothing to stop you having a good tent in Scotland. Plenty of shops will sell you one.
Yeah.
What's wrong with that? And I used to find that breastfeeding was infuriating to live an ordinary life. It was always getting in your way. If you're going to sit in the garden and breastfeed your baby, why don't you get out of your nice car or camping van and sit in the sun in the Bentlands?
I absolutely
Let alone
love that. Those articles in the Scotsman that you read, how did that feel reading those? Because obviously for you that felt the most natural thing is to take your children.
Exactly, and I thought it was, plumb stupid.
Yeah.
And I found that there was a firm, I said to them, look, I've got, 4 kids and they need clothes on the hill. Why couldn't you make me some anoraks or kids' anoraks? Why don't you do that? And they said, oh, really? Do you really think it would be worth it? So I took my kids down to the borders where this firm was, and I stood the children on something like that, and they cut the material
For their size.
for the right size and gave me the material. And then, needless to say, after a bit, I said, look, I'm a hopeless sewer. I'm sitting at night sewing. Couldn't you do that bit for me? So they started doing that for kids, and now all the climbing shops, they wouldn't dream of not having kids' clothes.
Wow.
And just the other day, I went into Aviemore, and there's several climbing shops there. I realised, I was very interested to see that their children's part had just as much as anywhere else.
Yeah.
And there were families walking in and out and buying, really nice anoraks with good material and so on. And nobody questions it now. Of course you can buy that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, of course, what you put on your, you have a big rucksack. What you do, and I remembered what my father did in India. He put me inside the rucksack. So you do that, put them in the rucksack. Then the baby squalls after a bit, and you think, well, why can't you have a nicely, or even a padded thing? And now I see, I remember when I first saw other people carrying babies in rucksacks. But now, and then people started putting babies on bikes in something or other. Mm-hmm. And now you see the most magic.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
You see little babies on the back of a bike.
Yeah.
Safely wrapped up or whatever. It's magic. I was born in 1930. The way to move around in those days, in my days, was hitchhiking. Nobody does that these days.
Oh, definitely not.
That we did. Everybody hitchhiked. And when you couldn't hitchhike anymore, you owned a car and you were giving lifts. And that was my way of life, was hitchhiking and climbing our mountains.
I absolutely
all because
love
of
that.
hitchhiking. And I don't think anybody these days.
No.
None of my grandchildren do. I think, they say, oh, Granny, we can get the train. And I think, wait a minute, I never took my day. You hitchhiked.
Yeah, I think
the kids don't do that.
We don't. I picked up a hitchhiker once on the way down from the car park at Cairngorm Mountain, and it was 2 guys who had been bothying and hiking, and they just wanted to go to the Pine Martin Bar, which was only about a mile along the road, but they were exhausted. And you could just, the look on their faces where they've been out in the mountains for days.
Oh, yes.
So I stopped and picked them up, and only took them a mile, and they were so grateful. And I think they ran in and had their first pint of beer. They were so grateful for that. So, but yeah, you don't really see hitchhikers these days, do you?
When I say to the grandchildren, let alone the great-grandchildren, why what's this about a train? Why?
We didn't do that in our day, exactly. We talked about being here in Scotland, but what made you want to go beyond Scotland, to go higher and further? How did Peru happen?
Peru?
Yes.
Every climber in the country, in the world, suddenly had to go to India because the highest mountain had been climbed. Everest. So everybody wanted to go there to climb Everest, because Everest had been climbed and everyone else, wanted to. But it's expensive. You can't climb high enough to really enjoy Everest if you live in Scotland or actually even in the Alps. But we found, in fact, or we suddenly discovered, you didn't have to go to India to learn to go higher. You could go to South America, where the mountains, some lovely mountains, but very, very few British climbers know about them or go to them. But I reckon that they sounded, just super, because we could go much easier. You could travel to South America very cheaply. So that's why we went to climb in Peru. There were magic high mountains, as high as, well, not as high as Everest, but as high as, most of the climbing peaks.
What did it feel like seeing those mountains for the first time? Because were those the highest mountains that you had seen?
Oh, yes. Oh, I just absolutely love climbing in Peru, and I think anyone that goes there, does too. But anyway, what I was going to say was, Brits were going to Australia. In Europe, people were wanting the same thing, to get some higher mountains, but they could go to South America. Wow. It's a very cheap place to go if you're a climber, to find some high mountains. Yeah. So that's what me and my friends, Billy Wallace, we were climbing there so that we could enable ourselves to climb on Everest.
What a conversation with Myrtle Simpson. Myrtle's story is not just inspiring, it's grounding. In a world that often celebrates speed, noise and constant achievement, Myrtle reminds us that meaning is built slowly, that adventure is not a race but a relationship with place, with self and with time. Myrtle's legacy is not only in Greenland crossings, high mountains or polar recognition, it's in the example she sets. Live fully, stay curious and keep moving forward. For Myrtle, it's clear that mountains are never just places. They're teachers, companions and a lifelong home. They've shaped her perspective, they've revealed what's mattered, and they've carried her across ice, mountains and time. And in those wild places, she found something enduring, not achievement but understanding, that life is richest when lived with freedom, curiosity and courage. So thank you, Myrtle, for your time, and thank you to each and every one of you who have listened to this episode. Tune in next week for the next episode, and until then, keep adventuring and don't forget, in the wild, we remember who we are.